to Jesus' encounter with this scribe in today's passage, the one I call the scribe who gets it, Jesus has an encounter with the Sadducees, who are hyper-focused on divorce because they want to use it to prove that there is no resurrection. And Jesus very astutely recognizes their problem and gives them an answer. In verse 24, he says, "Is not this the reason that you are wrong? That you know neither the Scriptures nor the power of God?" You know neither the Scriptures nor the power of God. I think that conversation's over. And then we move to today's passage. But in Mark's gospel, there's a very careful laying out of this version of Jesus' story in a way that methodically demonstrates who gets it and who doesn't. This whole section of explanation and ignorance, which is what happens throughout this section, when it is occasionally disrupted by understanding from what we would call and the disciples would call an unexpected source. And it begins with the first blind man in chapter 8. And then in chapters 8 and 9 and 10, there are three separate occasions when Jesus spells out to the disciples exactly how his whole life's purpose is supposed to work and how it will work. And each time that he does that in chapter 8 and 9 and 10, the disciples clearly demonstrate their complete failure to either engage or comprehend what he is saying. They completely derail the conversation about servant leadership and its inevitable clash with the socio-cultural interest of economics, politics, institutional power, religion itself, instead choosing on the three occasions, the first time to argue about who's the greatest. They missed it altogether. The second time when he brings it back up, they shush and shoo the children from his presence as if that is a bother to him. And the third time, two of them vie for seats in glory. And then there's the other blind man on the other end of this section. You might say the whole section is bookended by two blind men. And this time, in this blind man story, the one we had a couple of weeks ago, Mark is very clear. This blind guy gets it, because what he adds to the end of the story is that he follows Jesus, this blind guy, on the way. And from there, the story takes a dramatic turn as Jesus and the disciples arrive in Jerusalem. That is the opening to chapter 12. You and I, because we have read the story before, know that this is not just any trip to Jerusalem for Jesus and the disciples. It is his final trip anywhere. It is his last week alive. And the drama intensifies as Jesus enters the temple and takes action that threatens all of organized religion, really. He begins by overturning the money changers' tables in the temple. And fearful institutional leaders come out of the woodwork. And that is what sets up our story for today. In the 11th chapter, the chief priest and the scribes and the elders come to him. And as verse 28 says, they ask him, "By what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you the authority to do them?" And then in chapter 12, it says, they sent to him some Pharisees and some Herodians to trap him in what he said. Pharisees and Herodians who would not be caught dead together in the same room, except that they are both so threatened by Jesus that they are willing to join forces to ask him a trick question. And if he answers one way, one side's going to attack. And if he answers the other way, the other side's going to attack. And they're both going to run him out of town on a rail. But it doesn't work. And then the final attempt at trapping, right before our passage for today, some Sadducees who say that there is no resurrection come in and ask him this question. Everyone that has an encounter with Jesus so far has an agenda. And more importantly, they have already decided on both the correct and the incorrect answers to the questions that they're going to ask Jesus. So this isn't intellectual inquiry. They don't really want to know anything, much less spiritual seeking. It is straight up manipulative entrapment, and it fails. This is the environment, the malevolent environment into which we are dropped for today's radically different conversation and encounter. In a story and in a world where the insiders are too afraid to engage the truth, that is, the disciples, and the ones that the disciples would consider to be outsiders, at least all of the ones we have seen so far, have denied and distorted the truth for their own purposes. In this world, in this setting, a lone scribe wanders on stage and asks a question that is as profound as it is simple and is as innocent as it is earth-shattering. This scribe is a star shining into the darkness of human ignorance and fear. A scribe who worked for the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Herodians, who probably didn't have a job after this, but didn't care, asked a question out of a desire for knowledge and faith and the true answer, and not as a way to trap him. What is the first commandment, he asked. Not really what is the greatest, or certainly not what is the easiest, but where do we begin? How do we begin our faith journey? He wants to know. How does it all get started? Now, rabbis long before Jesus had, you might say, scotch taped two pieces of the Torah together, the Hebrew Scriptures, the Shema from Deuteronomy 6, and apart from Leviticus 19, and that is precisely what Jesus answers. He does not answer with one of the 10. He doesn't answer with one of the 650 that had been compiled since then, commandments. But he takes the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. He lists one, and then he lists another from Leviticus 19. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. So Jesus' answer is not unique. But notice two things in this story here. Number one, Jesus doesn't give one of the 10 as an answer. Doesn't even give one. He gives a pair. And notice that the scribe who gets it, who asks the question, is not only not disturbed by Jesus' choosing to answer the question differently than it was asked, he's all in with Jesus' answer. You are right, teacher. You have truly said that he is one, and beside him there is no other. And to love him with all the heart, with all the understanding, with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself, this is much more important than all whole burnt offerings or sacrifices. And this from one whose job comes from the burnt offerings and the sacrifices. And Jesus' response to him, you are not far. You are not far from the kingdom of heaven. He could have said, you've got it. You figured it out. But he doesn't. He certainly would not have said you're not far from any of the other folks he's had conversations with up to this point on this trip to Jerusalem. But to this one he says, you are not far. So the scribe is still lacking something. As important as the right answers are, ultimately it is the living and the doing that matter. So knowing that we are to love God and neighbor in some sort of balance is not the same thing as helping a dying friend to lift her fork so that she can eat her supper. Knowing that we are to love God and neighbor in some sort of balance is not the same as personally sacrificing or giving money to go to, say, Guatemala to bring clean water to people who regularly watch their children and their elderly die from preventable waterborne illnesses. or engaging the world around you in any one of the dozens of mission opportunities that are available in this congregation and this community and beyond. Being able to cite the great commandments, even from memory, is not the same as contacting your elected officials and letting them know two things. We are very good about the second thing, but not very good about the first, I think. Letting them know that you are praying for them. We forget to tell them that sometimes. And also letting them know that you are holding them accountable for how their votes and their policies affect not just the connected campaign contributors and the corporations, but also those without power, influence, voice, or even vote. There is no easy button for these two commandments, for holding them in balance. But it's certainly not an occasional quick coffee and social chit-chat with a neighbor about the weather. And it's not 75 minutes with your buddy Jesus at church on Sunday, or even 175. It's not even a warm, fuzzy feeling at all. It is a lifelong commitment to continually work on a set of relationships. A willingness to listen, speak, act, and sacrifice on a daily basis. It's far beyond the most amazing, life-altering thing you could ever hope for. And this scribe is given the invitation this day to join in that life transformation. And we are all invited to follow along. When you leave this place and go back to the rest of your life, all of it, every day from now to the time your time here on earth comes to an end, take these two ends of the same thread that Jesus offers as a way and as a key for meaningful existence, that is, love of God and the love of neighbor, and weave them in to your every thought, word, and action. And you will be not far from the kingdom of heaven.